Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Kem from Cancer Bridges, and welcome tonight to Navigating the Cost of Cancer Care with Aimee Hoch is our guest speaker tonight, and she's a financial navigator. So if this is your first experience with Cancer Bridges, I welcome you. We offer a lot of different education. You can find a lot of things on our YouTube channel if you're interested. And this will be recorded tonight. And just a note, this information changes very rapidly. So we are recording this on July 30th in 2025. So things do change. So although the backbone of this information will probably still be pertinent, maybe a lot of the details will change, and Aimee can get into that a little bit more. But just to introduce our speaker for tonight, it's Aimee Hoch. She has a master's level social worker with 20 plus years of experience in both healthcare and behavioral health. Her practice is focused on oncology, specifically addressing financial toxicity. She earned her MSW from Fordham University Lincoln Center and is a licensed social worker. She is also a certified oncology social worker. And Aimee is a member of the financial advocacy team at St. Luke's Grandview Campus Cancer Program, formerly known as Grandview Health, where she created and implemented the financial navigation program in 2018. She's a consultant for the Cancer Support Community Helpline as a financial navigation specialist. Aimee is an active member of the Association of Cancer Care Centers Financial Advocacy Network Advisory Committee, and she initiatives task force. This long one, and has been recognized for has been a recognized for fellow the organization. She is a member of the Medical Advisory Board at Living Beyond Breast Cancer. Aimee is a member of the Pennsylvania Cancer Coalition and the Quality of Life Survivorship Group. She is a member and a co-chair of the Pennsylvania Oncology Navigation Network and a member of both the Association of Oncology Social Workers and the Academy of Oncology Nurse and Patient Navigators. Aimee speaks nationally about financial toxicity and the role of financial navigation in cancer care. So I appreciate you being here tonight. Just a reminder, we are recording. If you could mute yourself, and I will record the presentation, and when we come to the Q&A, I will stop the recording so you can freely ask any questions that you have. So if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat or just hold them until the end. So that's probably the best way to do it. So welcome, Aimee. Thank you so much. It's up. I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm very excited to talk about this topic that is so important, and I, love having the opportunity to share it with all of the members of Cancer Bridges. So thank you. As Jen mentioned, I'm going to give an overview of financial toxicity, or what we refer to as financial distress, financial burden, and some resources. I did hear that many of you might have some questions about medications, so we're going to really focus on that at the end, and hopefully I've covered enough information to answer your questions. But if not, that's where we'll stop and open it up for a discussion on that, and hopefully I can help you with those questions. So I will get started. Let's see here. Okay, so I just wanted to start with a definition of financial toxicity, or again, financial distress is another word that's used. And it really refers to the detrimental effects of the excess financial strain caused by the diagnosis of cancer on the well-being of patients, their families, and society. And with continued escalation of cancer treatment costs, financial toxicity has become an important consideration in recent cancer care. When I started working in this expertise, it was new to me, and it seems like a long time ago. It's just something I like to share a little bit about this, because I want to let you know it's many people experience this, and that's why we have these services in place for it. So I sort of like to kind of, unfortunately, normalize it, because I want you to know that you're not alone and there is help out there. Why do we experience financial toxicity when we're diagnosed with cancer? Well, the cost of treatment is a main consideration. So the cost of cancer care is projected to reach 246 billion by 2030. New treatments are expensive. People are treated longer. There's longer survival, so that impacts spending and also financial burden. Those on oral therapy are particularly vulnerable to high out of pocket costs. And then when you couple that with non medical costs, like if you're no longer working and you're on a fixed income now, or a lower income, all of that is a part of the financial distress one experiences. And just another statistic, those diagnosed with cancer experience higher debt than the general population. Some sacrifices that individuals make when they're facing this financial burden. This was a study out of New York. I'm sorry, Memorial Sloan in New York. 49% they found were willing to declare bankruptcy. 38% were willing to sell their home. 65% were willing to make other sacrifices, such as borrowing money for their care. So it's important to note this, and the financial burden really can impact quality of life and treatment outcomes sometimes when treatment is too costly. I also wanted to share this, that as you can see, this was a study on the financial distress that breast cancer patients faced, and 74% reported financial distress. So again, just sharing that to let you know that this is why we're here and sharing this information. 74% changed their budget, 72 used their savings, 60% cut down on spending. Out of that 74%, however, only 40% use resources such as financial counseling or financial assistance, which is, both numbers are actually shocking, because there are some options out there. And again, why we're here tonight to share some of those. But it's really important that we identify that there might be a financial navigator at your cancer program, or a financial advocate, or an oncology social worker to help with this. You don't have to try to muddle through the resources on your own. So really, we need to increase that information getting out there. So beyond, I mentioned a little bit, beyond the cost of treatment, there are other factors that impact the financial toxicity one experiences. And that can be the type of insurance that a person has. So maybe their out of pocket is very high, or their deductible. So that increases financial distress. We often have multiple appointments. So we're not just seeing one, specialist. There's many. There's testing and imaging procedures. So kind of thinking about all of that. Another thing that impacts financial distress is reduced work hours, or loss of employment or income. Or if somebody's on a fixed income, they might have been on Social Security and already retired when they were diagnosed with cancer. Travel costs often impact financial distress. If you're scheduled for radiation, 5 days a week for 5 weeks, that's an increase in cost there. Sometimes that includes parking, depending on the center that you're going to as well. There's just increased daily living costs. You might be at treatment all day. You're not, at home fixing your meals, so you need to get some food while you're out. And then I like to consider prior to diagnosis. So I mentioned, if someone's already on a fixed income and going into being diagnosed, all of those, there's now so many more costs. So we need to really consider prior to diagnosis any financial burden that was there. Geographic location actually impacts financial distress, so where a person lives around our country, age, race, and marital status. And we also need to consider caregivers, right? They're also taking time off of work, might have a reduced income for a period of time. So all of those other items can impact the financial distress someone faces. We also, here in my cancer center, and I should mention I'm on the other side of the state, so I'm in Bucks County here, but many cancer centers in our state and also nationally are really focusing on what they consider non-medical or indirect costs. So it's not the cost of treatment and but and insurance issues, but we're really now assessing for if someone's struggling to afford food or housing, utilities, transportation. So know that there might be somebody in your cancer program that can help you address those things too. I like to start when I'm working with someone with helping them understand their benefits. A lot of the times we have insurance, whether it's through work or maybe it's a Medicare plan. And if we're generally just we're going to the doctor, have a copay every couple of months to see doctors, and we might be on a generic medication, we're not generally having to worry about hitting a deductible or out of pocket costs and paying a lot of copays. So we don't pay attention to that on a daily basis. Honestly, before I got into this field, I would have had to look at my card. I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head what my deductible and out of pocket was. I think this is really a good place to start. And I generally help individuals understand their benefits and why there are out of pocket costs. I do have the link on here. This is an educational material from OncoLink. And so they have it on their website, but I do have the link here, which I'll share. I'm going to send some resources to Jen and Cancer Bridges to share in the PDF format. So you have your premium, deductible, max out of pocket, copays, and sometimes coinsurance. And then if you're in or out of network, costs can vary. So in general, and we're going to visit this slide twice. So right now, if we're thinking about infusion costs, and we'll revisit it again for prescriptions and oral treatments, oral chemo, but generally, these are the three different categories dependent on the type of insurance that we try to use first for help. So if someone has a commercial insurance and it's a high cost medication, we generally look to see if that manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company, has what's called a copay card, and you might be familiar with that. Sometimes the manufacturers also have free drug programs or patient assistance programs. So again, I have in the bullets like who would qualify for that. It's generally both commercial insurance or Medicare, and commercial meaning from an employer, or if you have a marketplace plan, that's what kind of falls under commercial. And then also there are foundations out there. If you've used any of those or accessed any of those, there's quite a few. There's several different ones. They're not only based on insurance, but they're also based on diagnosis. So they can, be open. They may not be open at the time that we need them. So those are kind of, the different options that are there based on someone's diagnosis and insurance and medication. Also, if those resources are not available, sometimes the healthcare system can have an internal financial assistance program. And this can go beyond the treatment costs. So if there isn't a copay card, like I mentioned, or a free drug program, but there's a treatment prescribed and it's very costly, it might fall under the hospital financial assistance program. In addition, if you're getting other services at the hospital, that could also fall under it, like a PET scan or an x-ray, lab work. It's sometimes referred to as charity care, and each hospital has their own program. So if you applied here at St. Luke's, it would only help with the bills here. Or if you're getting care at UPMC, if they have a program, it helps with the bills and care there. If you're in between, organizations and healthcare systems, you can apply to both. The process varies a little bit, the policy varies a little bit. Applying for Medicaid may be a part of the process, and you really want to keep that updated. Sometimes it's every 6 months, depending on the healthcare system, or every year. But I'd just like to kind of give a little example of someone that I worked with and how we really need to consider all copays and all costs, not just there's a new treatment started and we're going to get this assistance for it, because we know there's other costs as well. So this is Dina. She is 60. At the time that I met her, and upon diagnosis, she was a business owner, so working, had an income. And the orange on the slide is what I helped her with. So she eventually applied for Social Security disability. So that shows that decrease in income. Initially, she was on a marketplace plan. I helped her get Medicaid when her income changed, helped her move over to a special Medicaid program for breast and cervical cancer. Then eventually she was eligible for Medicare and helped her with that process. So not only are there multiple costs and things to address, this can be over time, and I'll show you that in the next slide. So for infusion and oral therapies, we use a copay assistance card from the manufacturer, and one time we did use a free drug program, otherwise known as patient assistance. But there were other costs too, right? The office visit copays, scans, physical therapy, home care, palliative care, and other services and providers. So I helped her apply for the hospital financial assistance program for that. And then she had an outside biomarker testing bill for a couple $1,000s. Those testing companies often have their own built-in financial assistance program. I like to mention that because sometimes someone will bring me a bill and they're very generous with their financial assistance programs. And then I connected her with our oncology social worker to really focus on those non-medical costs. So she helped her with transportation, housing, household bills, and she was experiencing something we called food insecurity, where she, wasn't able to really afford, all the food needed. And so this is another individual I worked with, and I just like to show that, although we started working in 2020, she was in treatment long term, and I helped her through 4 different insurances and lots of treatment changes in that time, with using all different types of assistance. So you see here a copay card, that's what we used at that time. She had a change in employment and unable to work. She got applied for disability and was eligible for Medicaid, then eventually Medicare, and we used foundations then. So needs can change as income and insurance changes too. And I'll say this, throughout this presentation. If you have a financial advocate or navigator at your cancer center or a social worker, ask, because like I said, it's not a one-time thing. We're here to help ongoing. So I'm going to keep track of the time because I have like a really broad overview of a lot of different topics. So I'm probably going to go through these a little quickly so we have that time for the medication discussion at the end. But I like to mention, like, if someone needs time off of work, we often help with understanding if that person has FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act. It depends on your employer and how many are employed at your company. In that time, also, FMLA is kind of a placeholder for your role, your job, but it does not include income. So it holds your job for 12 weeks or longer if you want to take it intermittently. And the last bullet I mentioned, you also want to ask your employer if you have short or long-term disability available. So there are 5 states that have that built into the state. We are not one of them here in Pennsylvania, but it usually goes through the employer, and you might have to opt into those programs. Like where I work, we opt into short-term and long-term disability. Social Security, I get a lot of questions about this and the differences between Social Security disability, Social Security income, and Social Security retirement. So I'll also, send this information over, and I have that resource list at the end. A lot of questions about Social Security disability, and generally it's when someone's predicted to be out for a year or more. You can apply online, in person, over the phone with Social Security. There's often a waiting period. I get a lot of questions about that. So if someone is approved, and there's, even if you're approved fairly quickly, there's still a 5-month waiting period to get your benefits. There's also something called the compassionate allowance list, and certain diagnoses on there can help an approval be a little quicker, possibly. It's not a guarantee, but you can find that list on Social Security website. And then generally you get Medicare after being on Social Security disability after 2 years. I get a lot of questions about COBRA. It's really a continuation of your health insurance through your employer. And these are just some points that can be important. It's generally available for 18 months. A lot of people weigh out COBRA because it can be expensive. So it's a personal, decision based on your situation in that moment. If someone does lose insurance, I'm going to mention the marketplace. That's always an option. So again, I just wanted to share that information and a few facts about it. And I'll also share this. So I mentioned the healthcare marketplace in Pennsylvania. We have our own state-run website called Penny, and I put the number. It's income based. You might qualify for some cost sharing reductions and tax credits. You can call and get help talking to someone at Penny with looking at plans. I always say, like, they'll have a list of providers and medications. On Penny, you can go in and shop for plans without committing to anything. And it'll ask your providers and what medications you take. I think it's important to call your provider and make sure that they take that plan rather than just relying on what you see on the website. Just in case they stop that contract, it's always good to make sure they're still taking that plan. And generally, open enrollment starts in November. It goes to December 15th. It can be longer into January, but if you wanted to start January 1st, you would want to enroll by December 15th. If throughout the year, though, there are special enrollment periods. So say you lose your insurance, like if I lost my insurance at the end of this month, it opens up a special enrollment period for you to access a marketplace plan if needed. And then I also wanted to mention Medicaid. In Pennsylvania, we generally call it medical assistance. It provides full coverage. It can be primary or secondary coverage. There are many different Medicaid programs, or I call them buckets of Medicaid, depending on which one that you qualify for. And here in Pennsylvania, you can apply online at Compass. There's also an app you can use, or you can just go on your computer, in person at your local county assistance office, or by phone. And I like to note that if someone has had Medicaid or medical assistance and they become eligible for Medicare, they have to be reassessed. The income eligibility when you become eligible for Medicare changes from Medicaid. So if you might not keep it as a secondary, the Medicaid. So just keep that in mind. There's a difference there. I like to mention if someone is eligible for Medicaid when they first become eligible, there's enrollment services you call to pick your plan. And we generally have 4 or 5 choices based on our county. They'll send you a letter saying, here are the options to pick the plan. Generally, that letter comes out after the time that you were supposed to pick. So I always provide the number to everyone because if you don't call and pick, they will pick one for you. So I like to share that tip. And then if they pick the wrong one and your provider doesn't take it, it takes a month to unravel that and get a new plan. So just to not delay any treatment or care. I mentioned the Medicaid programs. I'll share this with everyone. And then Medicare, I work a lot with individuals enrolling and becoming eligible for Medicare, whether it's when they're 65 or when they're been on disability for 2 years. When you become eligible for Medicare, if you want to keep original Medicare and get a supplemental plan, you have 6 months to do that. There's a 6-month window, and that's my second bullet. The importance of a supplemental or gap insurance. It's called a Medigap or supplemental plan. And I like to mention that so if you wanted one, you don't lose that window. Now, there's another opportunity that it comes up in Pennsylvania. Not every state follows this rule, but we luckily have this available. So if I was on disability at the age 30 and 2 years later, I was eligible for Medicare and I didn't pick a supplement then, when I turned 65 in the state of Pennsylvania, you have that opportunity again to get that supplement. And when I say get that, I mean without underwriting and at a lower cost. You could maybe get one outside of that 6-month window, but they would consider all of your health conditions and it would be a higher cost. So that 6-month window is important. And I'm going to share a really important resource. In the state of Pennsylvania, we have what's called PA Medi, and those are unbiased Medicare counselors at every Department of Aging in every county. And I have that on my resource list to share with you. Nationally, it falls under a program called SHIP, SHIP, but in Pennsylvania, we've called it PA Medi. And they're wonderful. They're giving you a general overview and education of all the parts of Medicare and your options, not tied to like someone selling certain plans. So they're not brokers, but they are very well versed in Medicare and they're volunteers. So I do have that for you. It can be confusing. It's like you don't know if I'm going to do a original Medicare or a Medicare Advantage plan. So that's so important when you're enrolling in Medicare to work with someone and also mention any treatment and care that you're getting so they can make sure that they're providing you the right information considering all of that. So just a little visual. The red, white, and blue card on the left, that's what we basically refer to it. That's original. Everyone gets a Medicare card like that, even if they pick a Medicare Advantage plan. So that is your Medicare card. If you want to keep original Medicare and get a supplement, this is kind of like how it looks. You have your Medicare first, you have your supplement card, and then you have a standalone Part D or prescription card. If you opt to go into a Medicare Advantage plan, generally all of this is bundled together, and an insurance company is managing your Medicare. Um, it could be Aetna, it could be, Blue Cross, all different insurance companies. So, um, and most of the time, the prescription coverage is included. Some Medicare Advantage plans, the prescription coverage is not, and you have to purchase a separate plan. Just a little bit about enrollment periods for Medicare. We, are all familiar with open enrollment in the fall. If you have Medicare, you might be getting calls, and there's commercials and stuff in the mail about open enrollment. And then there's a program called Medicare Savings Program. And if you qualify financially, income wise, this can help with that Medicare premium that everyone pays every month. So we're going to talk a little bit about medications, and then we'll stop, for some time for questions. So I held off with going into Medicare Part D because we're now transitioning into talking about medications. So you may be familiar if you have a specialty type medication, an oral prescription, often it's oral chemotherapy or any other specialty medications. If you have experience with that, they're generally coming from a specialty pharmacy. You can't go to your local CVS or Walgreens and pick up those medications. So there's the local pharmacy and the specialty pharmacy, and there are resources for both. Like sometimes people get something from a specialty pharmacy for treatment, and they still have all their other supportive medications that they get at their local pharmacy. So I thought I would mention some of the changes that happened in 2025 for Medicare Part D. You might have heard there's now a cap on the out-of-pocket costs for Medicare Part D, which is a really positive thing that happened. This was all part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so starting January 1st of 2025, we saw Medicare prescription coverage cap off at $2,000 out of pocket for the year. Now, if you generally are on generic medications and you get them at your local pharmacy and they're inexpensive, you're not going to ever need to consider that $2,000 out of pocket to meet. But in the past, some people were paying $8,000 up to $12,000. You probably heard terms like the donut hole, catastrophic coverage. All of that has gone away, and we have this new cap. With that, they also offer now a payment plan for Medicare prescription. Any medications covered by Medicare prescription plans. So it gives you the option to smooth out that $2,000, or if it's less, like say your total cost for the year is $1,000, you can smooth that out into monthly payments. You opt into that by contacting your health or drug plan. You don't pay. If you do that, you're not paying at the pharmacy counter. You actually will get a bill from your prescription plan. So it's a little bit of shift there too with how it's paid for. So if you are looking at maybe needing to meet that out of pocket, this payment plan is available, but it's really important to consider other things first. There might be help available for this out of pocket cost. So I kind of look at the payment plan as a alternative, but let's check out if there's other assistance out there first to help you meet that out of pocket. Anyone that I work with that has a Medicare prescription plan, I am assessing them to see if they qualify for what's called extra help or the low income subsidy. This is a program run through Social Security, and it has income and resource guidelines. But if you qualify for this, you your cost of your medications go down tremendously. I think this year it's like $5 for generics and maybe 9 or 10 for brand drugs. And that also includes like expensive medications such as oral chemotherapy. So this is like the first go-to when somebody has Medicare Part D that I look at and see if they qualify. Then you're not worrying about that $2,000 cap. You don't have to worry about the payment plan. This is going to help you. So I have the income guidelines. So the first number, for instance, for individuals, that's the income, the 23,475, the 17,600 are resources. And then for married couples, income, resources. And again, you can call Social Security to apply or go, they have a really easy application online that you can do right on the Social Security website. Probably the most important program for Medicare Part D recipients. Each state has a pharmaceutical assistance program too. Um, in Pennsylvania, we have what's called PACE or PACEnet. So if you don't qualify for extra help, that's always my go-to. I'll look at PACE next. For individuals, it allows for a little bit more income, especially in the PACEnet category, to help you qualify. It generally helps with all of your medications. There are times, though, where there's a specialty medication, it might not help with that, like an oral chemotherapy, something like that. But it depends. So PACE and PACEnet are a great resource as well. It's just a little bit of criteria here for you. So for PACE and PACEnet, you must be 65, where extra help, you just need to be a Medicare Part D recipient. So if I have Medicare and I'm 35, I can, you can't do PACE because this criteria is for 65. Pennsylvania resident, enrolled in a prescription benefit, and again, the income requirements. And you can call, go online, or mail, fax, or email the application. Really another helpful program. And then I wanted to read, this is, if you notice this slide from before, I bring this back around because these assistance programs are also for oral treatment too, not just infusion. So again, if I'm prescribed an expensive oral chemotherapy, generally, if I had commercial insurance, like through work or the marketplace, I'm going to check first if there's a copay card through the pharmaceutical company to help me with that. And the specialty pharmacy would attach that copay card, and then your medications get sent to you in the mail. If that doesn't exist and I can't afford the out-of-pocket costs, whether it's the Medicare $2,000 or if I'm on a commercial plan or I'm uninsured, you can apply for a free drug program or patient assistance if it exists for that medication. That again is through the manufacturer. It's based on each individual medication. There are income guidelines for that. And then also I mentioned foundations. Those are outside foundations. There are quite a few different ones, and those you start with based on diagnosis. So before you look into a payment plan or paying out of pocket, these are all external assistance programs that we would look at first, because you make your out of pocket, whether if you have a commercial plan or a Medicare prescription plan. These programs will help with that out of pocket cost to help you meet that. And some are available. Again, some of the foundations, I monitor them daily. Sometimes they're open one day and not the next, and we're constantly monitoring those. So I wanted to mention some other resources for prescriptions. I mentioned the Blueberry Pharmacy. Jen shared that with me. That's something in your local community, and it's similar to the other resource I listed, Cost Plus Drugs. So these are pharmacies that have lowered their costs because they, I guess you could say, there's like the middle person is taken out of the process. And so I if someone is paying out of pocket for medication, say at the time they don't have insurance, um, I generally always check Cost Plus because there could be a really expensive medication that they have reduced on their website. Um, and there's also resources for all medications. So I like to say shop around. One pharmacy, you could pay more at one retail pharmacy in your community than the other. It's incredible, actually, that there's a difference based on which one you go to. And there's also $4 lists. So Walmart has this list, Target has had it. So I look at that list all the time because with my insurance, I might be prescribed an antibiotic and I have to go to CVS to pick that up. Maybe it's $15. I always check the Walmart list because you can go there without your insurance and it just you need your prescription, of course, but it might be the same medication for four. So I just like to mention that for anyone to, shop around and check that out. And then, of course, you're probably familiar with discount cards and coupons. Like a lot of people ask me about GoodRx. Um, they tend to help like temporarily, and it can be some great savings. Um, but if it's a really high cost medication, we might need to look at those other assistance programs that I mentioned. So, most importantly, I think that people often say, like, how do I navigate all of this? This is a lot. That's a lot of information that I just went through. And just knowing where to go, even though I just shared all of that, knowing that, oh, I could apply for a foundation versus a copay card, or how can I get help with food or help with my household bills? Please ask if your cancer center has a financial advocate or financial navigator. They might um, you might just not know that they're there, right? And if they don't, seek out, most cancer centers have oncology social workers, and they're very well versed also in these assistance programs, and also can help refer you to those programs with daily living costs and non-medical costs. I don't think it's ever too early to ask because if you start from the beginning when initially diagnosed, it really helps decrease the amount of stress, the financial distress, um, and that you start developing a relationship with that advocate or navigator. And as there are changes in your treatment or income or insurance, they can help you navigate through all of that. So ask your oncologist, any of your doctors, if you have a nurse navigator. Please ask if you have someone available. It's always good if you have someone in your cancer program because they know your treatment plan. They're working with your doctors, and then maybe there isn't a navigator there. So I'll share, if you haven't been able to find help in your cancer center, the Cancer Support Community Helpline um, does have navigators. There's financial navigation available if you don't have that in your cancer center. And other great resources, the American Cancer Society. I mentioned OncoLink before. That's where I showed you that uh, sheet with how to explain your benefits, like the deductible, copay, all of that. They have a ton of educational resources on OncoLink beyond the insurance information. That's run out of Penn Medicine, but it's available to everyone. Triage Cancer is a great option, a lot about the financial insurance, time off of work, as well as cancer and careers. these are what I'll be sharing. I tried to include phone numbers when able, so I'll be sending these out to Jen to share. So just kind of an overview of the resources I mentioned and how to get in touch. So there's that extra help program. There's the PA Medi in Pennsylvania for Medicare counseling, Medicare savings program, PACE and PaceNet, Marketplace, Cobra. And those are my references. And I will leave time for questions. I know we're going to stop the recording real quick.